So I was like, oh, I like both.
Big deal, it's really some shade.
Alright, who wants some Mike Mikes?
Chris, you're anything like me, man. I covet those.
I would eat the entire box, Will,
He's trying to like
I will too.
diet.
I got one in my car.
Mike
without
Mikes.
even blinking.
I got it in my car. They're dangerous.
Thank you.
And you know what's the best thing is like candy is ridiculously expensive now. You know, like a Snickers bar is like $3. You used to get a whole box of these for like $1.
I know,
get-
it's the
At the
best.
dollar store, they're literally $1.
It's awesome.
I just happened to be there today and I was like, Chris, and I grabbed a bunch.
This meat is sponsored by
No,
No, gosh.
We could get a Mike and Ike sponsorship.
That would
You
be,
just have boxes of them in the back.
we'd never have a bad one.
That's Mike and Ike's Cocina, because they're fresh.
To replace them.
Largest volume of Mike and Ike's, Eric's New Asians, because they're a little bit more crunchy. Probably had like, finished about 5 years or
Done
something.
goes fast.
Yeah. Hey, good morning.
You want those?
Hey, all right, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, you didn't do that. You didn't have to do that.
Yes, I had, you kidding me?
That's it, yeah. Looks one out of there. Where are they local? Oh, they're a local construction team, right?
I don't think so. I think a lot of them travel around the country.
So.
They're probably-
They're like, "Come on." Everyone, thanks for showing up tonight. I'd like to call to order the Board of Trustees meeting for Tuesday, August 8th, 2023. Will you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will the clerk roll call the roll, please?
Mayor Karsbach.
Here.
Trustee Hardy.
Yes.
Trustee Albrecht.
Here.
Trustee Ayers.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Grace and Trustee Murphy are absent.
Okay, thank you. Next on our agenda is citizen participation. This is a chance for anyone in the audience tonight to speak to the board for something not on tonight's agenda. Actually, I don't think we're gonna open the other ones up. So if you'd like to speak to any of the other items, we can put that, you can speak at this time now too. We have 3 signed up, and I'll call, if anyone did not have a chance to sign up, I'll also just open it up afterwards and you can come to the front. If you could please come to the front, state your name and address, and if you could please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Thank you. So we'll start with, is it George?
Yes.
George, okay.
In the right camera spot?
You are, yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'm Dr. George Garmany, and I live at 782 South 10th Street in the Rose Farm Acres. And that's about 100 yards north of the Dry Creek bed, which is a classic mosquito breeding zone. I'm a retired physician, and I specialized in neurology for about 40 years. In 2003, I had a simply terrible experience of spending most of August and September in the Boulder Community Hospital Intensive Care Unit, caring for patients with West Nile encephalitis. I have to tell you, West Nile disease is just a rotten disease. It's ugly. I saw serious brain infections with inflammation causing epileptic seizures, paralysis, cognitive loss, and sadly, a few deaths. Even people who recovered often had ongoing problems, neurologic deficits with things that would look like stroke, speech disorders, and fatigue that lasted months or years, or sometimes even permanent after the acute illness. You may know that there is simply no treatment for West Nile virus. There is no treatment for that. So all we could do is perform spinal taps. Does that sound like fun? Spinal taps to rule out treatable disease. You had to make sure you weren't dealing with some other bacteria. But then once you made the diagnosis, you could treat the convulsions that people had and brain swelling and support vital functions. That's pretty much all we could do. What you cannot imagine is how incredibly frustrating that was to patients, their families, and all of us doctors, nurses, and therapists who were on the hospital staff. Now, there's also no vaccine for West Nile virus, so all prevention depends on individual behaviors and public health management, particularly through eliminating mosquito vectors. Failure to do that kind of thing leaves the community at the risk of a repeat of that gut-wrenching 2003 experience. Technically, that was an epidemic, not a pandemic, but the difference between those things didn't matter a lick to the people who wound up affected by the disease. My neighborhood, Rose Farm Acres, in addition to being right next to Dry Creek, holds a lot of retirees like myself, people in the over 60 age group who are known to be most vulnerable to this illness. As Berthoud expands back from the bluff back down to the creek beds where it really began, it's just grossly irresponsible not to provide protection for those who live in the new neighborhood. Larimer County also tells me that milder cases often go unreported, so we really don't know what the incidence is until we start seeing the serious complications. And furthermore, the mosquito trap that's just a couple of blocks south of here is always going to underreport the mosquito population because it isn't down where the mosquitoes live. This is an urgent matter. Fort Collins and Denver media have already called attention to Berthoud's poor response to the threat. You've already heard the statistics of this year's infestation and infection rates. I urge the town board to put spraying on the agenda tonight so that you can discuss it now and take prompt action to prevent the epidemic that's facing us. Thank you very much for your attention and consideration.
I'll say that was the close 2:58. That was perfect timing.
I tried.
Thank you very much. Just want to say real quick, the board, we don't respond to public comment. Trustees can reach out. Also, this will be on a future agenda. We did direct staff to bring this back. We'll have another discussion here.
But it is urgent.
We're down 1, 2, 3 actually trustees tonight, so thank you very much though. Next is Jeffrey Hoskin.
My name is Jeffrey Hoskin. I live at 1009 Gabriella Lane in Rose Farm Acres here in Berthoud. I'm retired, taking care of my elderly 90-year-old parents. We lived at that location for 2 years, come up next month. We are not strangers to the Berthoud area. We fueled our vehicle at the Cliff Bryce Station on the curve when two-lane 287 came through town. And then we'd stop down here at the Wayside Inn when it was Williams, not Peterson's. So I've been around Berthoud. The Dry Creek bed referenced previously is around 150 yards from our back porch. There is a great deal of standing water in the area that creates an ecosystem conducive to mosquito breeding. Our subdivision was completed a year or so ago, and for this drainage to be left in this state is an oversight either by the developer or town inspection services department or both. Over the past 3 years, our family has dealt with avoiding the COVID and RSV viruses, along with the routine health issues associated with the aging process. Now we are forced, aided by the recent decision by the town board of trustees, to deal with the West Nile virus. The decision to ignore the recommended public health management protocol set forth by the Larimer County Department of Health and Environment is not reassuring and places undue risk on the community. Last I checked, the Larimer County Department of Health and Environment is budgeted through our tax dollars. For the trustees to prevent the recommendations of this agency to assist in the quality of life becomes a real issue in my book. We are not receiving our tax benefit. With the solid evidence at the disposal of the trustees, I am livid that the decision not to spray was made. If the risk to pollinators is the main focus, then what is the issue of the recommended application process after the pollinators are safely in their hives late at night? With the Front Range media focusing attention on Berthoud's lame response to the obvious threat, especially in light of the current infection rates and the first recorded death in neighboring Weld County, it wouldn't surprise me that this will affect the local economy. I intend to take my business elsewhere and withdraw my support due to the town's response. I urge the town board to put mosquito spraying on the agenda for tonight's meeting and to reverse their decision on this emergent issue. Thank you for your time and efforts.
Thank you. Is this, Dick, is that Bailey? Dick Bailey?
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been here 3 years. This is my first time at one of your trustees meeting, and I think I met you at Armagost thing that we went to, and
Mr. Bailey, could you state your address for the record?
1295 Tipton Street.
Thank you.
In the land of sinking houses. That's a little facetious comment, obviously. We have a lot of soil problems up there.
I understand.
And I guess one of the things I would like to ask is, what do we do as a city to prevent the kind of disaster that we've got going on at Hammond Farms? Just a comment. The other comment is, we are next to Lake Berthoud, across the road. And there are massive detention areas that are full of stagnant sewer-looking water that reach from 287 to the bridge on 287 to the east. What are we doing to mitigate mosquitoes in those areas? I think it's a question worth asking. These gentlemen have spoken very eloquently about the disease. I have personally seen a friend of mine in Weld County spend the rest of his life with crippled arms and slow speech, similar to a stroke. It ruined his life. I suggest that we think about, I'm all in favor of pollinators too, but when does it come at the risk of human lives? That's a decision that our government needs to make. Are there conflicts of interest on the board? Those are considerations. The other issue I'd like to bring up is weed control. In the parcel that I talked about at Lake Berthoud is absolutely filled with Russian thistle, Canadian thistle. It's all over the community and it just blows everywhere. Do we have any policy about weed control? I lived in Golden for 40 years and they did have some policies on thistle and weed control because it is a problem. I guess that's really all I have to say. I appreciate you taking the time to volunteer your lives and your personal lives to do this. I spent 14 years on the Golden Parks Board, so I know what you're doing. So I appreciate what you're doing, and I'd like to see you bring up the mosquito issue again. I think it's prudent.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Is there anyone in the audience that did not have a chance to speak or sign up tonight and wishes to speak? Clerk, do you have anyone online by chance?
We do not, Mayor Carstner.
All right, Administrator Kirk, do we, our library siting, does it cover Dry Creek or Berthoud Reservoir?
It does. Our larvicide program really covers the entire town limits, including some areas outside of town where we have permission to go and treat standing bodies of water.
Okay, that's good. It's not a perfect solution, I understand, but I just wanted that we are looking into that and trying to treat the larvae before they become adults. And our weed control, I mean, you guys did a great job on that last week.
We have a weed control contractor that manages all of our open spaces. We actually use a couple different firms. We do have one that works at the reservoir and sprays for thistle. Thistle is notoriously difficult to control, but we do hire a third-party contractor that our open space staff monitors and works with to control weeds at the reservoir and all of our open space areas.
Okay, for all the audience tonight, if you have questions regarding any of this stuff, feel free to email us, more technical stuff. Also, email Administrator Kirk. Some of that stuff you were talking about with Tipton Street was before our time. We have a lot of great new staff members too. I don't know if Ken's here tonight, but Administrator Kirk would be able to help you out. I do want to say some stuff that's probably not controversial from either side of the board here. The decision to delay and then the other decision to suspend. Delaying that first vote, the vector index, so delaying the first spray, actually the vector index reduced below that 3.0 to the threshold that we would not spray. So by doing that first delay, we essentially saved $6,000 and the number went down naturally on its own. The second one that was just last week, we got our numbers back just yesterday, and we are at a 0.00 vector index, which is unreal. So I want the folks here, not only in the audience, but in the community, just to know that right now we're a safe spot. So I know the suspension is very controversial. We'll be working on that. But for the time being, the numbers have gone down. So thank you very much, everyone who took the time to come in here and speak. We really appreciate it. Feel free to reach us on email if you have anything else. At this time, we're going to move on to consent. Do you trustees have any questions about A through F on consent agenda, or would like it removed? Otherwise, is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. Trustee Hardy has moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Trustee Albrecht has seconded. Clerk, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Trustee Hardy,
Yes.
Trustee Ayers,
Yes.
Trustee Albrecht,
Yes.
Mayor Carstner.
Yes. Without any objection, I'd like to move the appointment to the Planning Commission ahead of everything else. Is that all right?
Sure.
All right. Trustee Hardy took the lead on the Planning Commission interviews last night. I was kind of a secondary. So you mind kind of presenting on that?
Yeah, so we had two really good candidates, both, interviewed really well. It was a hard decision, I thought, because I was kind of back and forth on both of them. And then just eventually tilted the scale towards wanting to appoint Nick, I'll probably mess up his name, Samadalis.
Okay.
I had Sean on the brain because that's who he
Yeah.
used his wife's computer, but Nick Samadalis is who we would like to appoint to the planning commission, and
Okay.
Both candidates are in the same neighborhood and also share residency with one of the current planning commissioners up near TPC. And I encourage them both to also look at getting on their own Metro District boards as well.
You did. Thank you, and also thank you to the candidates, if they happen to be watching. It was, in my opinion, kind of splitting hairs on that. Both interviewed really well. Both are relatively new residents, but came with some pretty unique ideas and put some thought into this. One was pretty knowledgeable on our comprehensive plan, while the other one showed up to a planning commission meeting and seemed very interested too. So let's see here. Trustee Hardy moved to appoint to Nick Samadalis to the planning commission. Is there a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay, trustee Ayers is seconded. Clerk, may we have a roll call vote on that, please?
Trustee Albrecht,
Yes.
trustee Ayers,
Yes.
trustee Hardy,
Yes.
Mayor Karspeck.
Yes, all right. Thank you, Mr. Salmadalis. All right, we'll move back up here to item number 2, which is the staff recognition awards presentation by our clerk, Christian Samora.
Hi.
Hello.
Good evening, Mayor Karspeck and trustees. Christian Samora, Town Clerk. Teresa Morgan, our Neighborhood Services Officer. This evening, we would like to share with you the Juan Eagle Award that was presented to the Town of Berthoud by the Colorado Association of Code Enforcement Officers. The Juan Eagle Award is presented annually to a member jurisdiction that has successfully promoted community involvement through its code enforcement officials. This is a traveling trophy that is held by the awarded jurisdiction for a year until a different community receives recognition for their achievements. So we'll have this, I believe, until next April. Actually, it's February. I stand corrected. The award was presented to Teresa Morgan, our Neighborhood Services Officer, at the recent conference of the Colorado Association of Code Enforcement Officials in recognition of the holiday lighting contest that was held last year. The lighting contest was a community-wide event that had over 30 participants, 35 to be exact, and was a huge success. In recognition of those contributions, we have prepared a certificate in recognition of Teresa's dedication to the community.
Thank you very much, Teresa.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Well,
feel free to say anything if you like, no pressure if you don't.
Well, I don't feel like my name should be the only name on here, just
do.
because of the fact that I wasn't the only one that worked on it. I mean, Trustee Hardy helped me with making the banners. Chris gave me a very small budget to use. Christian helped me in planning. I had Stephanie back here helping with promoting it and, you know, people in the planning department. So I can't be the only name on this. So that's why I said it's for the town of Berthoud. It's not for just me.
Well, you're certainly humble, Teresa, but I'd like to add how great it is to have you as our code enforcement. I mean, you can't even imagine, I think all of us in the audience, how tough that job is naturally. And have your kind of personality and approach to residents. I don't think I've ever heard a single complaint. It's always been positive, including when you have to come to my house about the sunflowers. It's always positive.
She's someone you
Um,
wanna meet but don't wanna meet.
Yeah, and I think especially with the Christmas lights, I think it's opening up a new side of code enforcement or really the town of kind of being proactive, changing the name to was it Neighborhood Services and moving it under the clerk's office. I think is not only more efficient, it's really rare too. Is what I found out. Other communities don't do this. Makes a lot of sense. So I hope we can keep you forever and thank you very much for what you've done.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks,
Plan on
looking for next
staying.
year.
I'm sorry.
I'm looking forward to see what you bring up next year, so you get to
Oh.
keep it a second year.
Yeah, can we
I
keep
did
if we do
I'm
double clerk?
hoping, since we already named it the first annual, I'm kinda hoping that there's gonna be a second annual,
Yeah.
so that's up to,
So what are you gonna do to top
Chris
the
here.
lighting? You gotta get the award a second year.
we'll think about that. We'll think about that. I'm trying, but Keith won't help me.
We'll work it
I
out.
wanna do some cleanup, but we'll see.
Alright.
That's gonna take some work.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you, my friend.
All right. Next is our town communications plan, and this is by Stephanie Horvath. Stephanie, I'd like to introduce you. I mean, you've been a great asset to the community since we've had you. I think the board and the community have great presentations, so it's awesome to see you on social media, kind of promoting the town, and working with us too on getting some stuff out, so thank you very much.
My pleasure. So, good evening, Mayor Karspeck, trustees. I'm Stephanie Horvath, as he said, and I'm here to present the General Communications Plan and the Crisis Communications Plan for your feedback and approval. The General Communications Plan outlines how we communicate with the community on day-to-day basis. The Crisis Communication Plan is based on the one used by Louisville during their devastating fires and assembled with the guidance from the Public Information Director at Larimer County Sheriff's Office. Nice of you to show up. And Sergeant Williamson, as well as input from the fire department. The purpose of the Crisis Communications Plan is to outline the roles and responsibilities and procedures of town officials and departments that will guide the town in sharing information promptly and accurately with all audiences during a crisis. We consider a crisis a significant event or incident that disrupts or has the potential to disrupt the town's usual activities and operations. This could include a fire, severe weather, crime, or any other threat that involves a response from police, fire, utilities, or medical personnel. The plan we use is flexible, and it's used in conjunction with other emergency decision-making procedures of the town. The plan solely describes the crisis communication roles and responsibilities and procedures that will be followed by the town's crisis communications team and does not address other response and recovery procedures that will likely also be implemented. That would be what they're doing. We're just managing how we communicate around it. Elements of this plan will be tested annually in conjunction with town-wide emergency exercises and drills. The guiding principles of this crisis communications plan are to communicate incident facts as accurately and quickly as possible, update information regularly as circumstances change to ensure the safety of the Berthoud community, and continue operation of essential town services. The objectives of the plan include understanding the process for decision-making during an emergency, understanding communication procedures for events that result in the activation of an emergency operations center, and that would be activated by the LCSO, not us. And assessing the situation to determine whether emergency notification communications, NOCO alerts, are warranted and the appropriate urgency of the notifications. Implementing immediate actions to communicate in an accurate and timely manner about the situation to manage rumors and ultimately restore a sense of confidence and order to our community. I'm presenting this tonight to the board to ask questions, or if you have any questions, you can provide feedback, and ultimately I ask that you guys approve it so that we can put it into practice.
Awesome. Thank you, Stephanie. I know I said there would be no public comment, but this might be one that if the public will want to feed in, I'll open it up. Does trustees have any questions?
Seems like a step forward.
So the NOCO alerts is LIDA, right? Is that the tech? Okay.
It's
Oh, yeah,
Everbridge,
great.
it's kind of branded in different areas.
Before we move on, is anyone in the audience, just by chance, like to ask any questions or? All right, well, this sounds like a great idea. Thank you for getting on this. Okay. Oh, yeah, no, go ahead, sorry.
I was trying to be polite and
Yeah,
wait for
sorry,
questions, but I have one comment or suggestion. But well, first of all, I just wanna start a round of applause. This has been 4 years.
Do it, let's do it.
Way to go. Yeah, this is so exciting. We've been through 3 historic events since I've lived in Berthoud, starting with the 1,000-year floods up until the Camera Peak fires and COVID, and then just being on town board, we've had 2 of those incidents. So this is a major step in the right direction. The one thing just working in emergency services that I had thought of that could be helpful to the town participants is that if the mayor and mayor pro tem as well as town administrator had annual FEMA training on incident command, with the fire chief and police chief or sergeant, because that would give them kind of that understanding of that framework, because when you're in an incident, you don't necessarily know how that rolls out, or you're not necessarily firing on all cylinders because you're in that moment. So I think it would be neat to incorporate some type of annual FEMA overview class on incident command and what the role of a mayor pro tem, as well as town administrator would be. That's the only thing I would maybe add the verbiage to for this, otherwise it looks very polished and thank you.
Yeah, I think that's great, because not only, like, for COVID, for example, I didn't have any formal authority. I mean, I was kind of relaying information from the congressman, but for people going forward, it might be good to know what you do and do not do, and that way you're not kind of freaking out.
Yep.
Yes, I think it's a great idea.
So if I may, I was at the SWAT training about a month ago up in Wellington, and I spoke with Kate Kimball about doing a training where we involved leaders so they know how to communicate and what would be expected of them. That's not really my role because I'm more community. In essence, the whole the crisis communications plan is we all keep our mouth shut, we don't go on social media, and we let them do their job. And they'll feed us information, and then the appropriate person passes it forward. Because we're kind of small potatoes and we can get in the way more than we can help a lot of times. So,
Small potatoes.
well, with the house,
I know,
if
I
the
get it.
place is burning down.
I totally get it.
I do agree with you, just from a experiential, I remember when Cameron Peak Fire was happening and I had this bright idea, I'm like, there's gonna be people that need a place to stay, we should open up our schools, and I called the mayor and I said, hey, is there any way we can do this? And there wasn't an established communications chain that we could say, how can we implement this quickly? And so I think having those regular routine relationship building between the mayor and the emergency service officials and that chain of command, so that way they know he's falling in line with what the command structure is and he's not defying it, or he or she,
Yeah,
whoever's
absolutely, yeah.
here. But I think just having that established ahead of time helps, so in the moment they could say, Mayor, would you help facilitate on your side getting schools?
So that's kind of more for opening it up just in case other communities need extra capacity in their, I know like Dog Ranch opened it up to dogs and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, just having that line of communication, that understanding, and knowing that they could talk to him or vice versa. That way, we never know what's coming, so it's good to just have that regular routine. I think understanding of who the big players are and how to talk to them in that moment would be nice I think it'd be nice to have in this document that there's that LCSO and Berkeley Fire provide couple hour training on incident command for leadership on the board. Does anybody else see benefit
Yeah.
in something like that?
I do. I think there's benefit for maybe every trustee, but I think it's also good. I mean, generally, yeah, no matter what, it's gonna the mayor. Yeah, if whether you can or can't act, the mayor. People kind of go to that, so it makes sense.
Sure.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. Good comments, May. All right, where are we? Okay, we're gonna move on now to gateway signage concepts. Man, I can't talk tonight. This is by our deputy town administrator, Amy Ollinger. While they're setting up and gateway signage, thank you to Steph and I think Linda's in the back. Man, you guys got right on those weeds on the north end of town. Heron Point,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, so thanks for doing that. It was pretty impressive how quickly they got turned around.
Also, the houses be next to the rec center. I noticed they mowed a nice little path
Oh.
through there, so hopefully
I didn't notice that.
help appease them too.
That's part of our normal mowing plan. They started mowing before we got to it. So.
Okay, good evening, trustees, Mr. Tonight, it's just an update, what staff's been working through a little bit, just the initial introduction to some gateway signage for the town. As you may or may not know, we have the 3 locations. These signs, you'll see the gateway sign to the east, that's the pins are generally in the north and south. On the west side, on 287, north and south of Highway 56 or Main Street coming into town, and then we have the east location. These signs have been up the better part of 20+ years. These are the current signs, the condition, you'll see the weathering, the 3 different signs we have, obviously, maybe not obvious, but the middle one that faces north is in the best condition, but obviously the other 2 on the outside take a lot of beating, a lot of weathering, few holes, a few beer bottles or pop cans, as they say. There's a couple dents in them, but they've served their course of time and purpose, and we're taking a look at what we can do to either update them or do something different. So our inspiration to change a little bit this year, we as you guys know, we updated our website. So we kind of took the beyond pictures, the background pictures, as kind of some initial inspiration, just to get you guys some initial designs. This topic will probably come back a few times. So just so you know where the inspiration came from is the website, and trying to be consistent with our website, our town website. So I got 5 different options, and when I say options, it's kind of a loose interpretation. They're just 5 designs that we're gonna show you that just spurs some discussion down the road, what we wanna do and what we may not wanna do. So just something to take a look at, and not so worried about the words or the fonts, but about change and if we wanna change. So those are a couple 2. The next 3, kind of what we came up with, just to start the brainstorming sessions, and we can come back to these. So, and the next thing is just, as we work through what do other towns and cities do, mainly, inside the polls, right? What type of design, do they put their logos on, do they not, do they keep it simple, do they keep it clean, do they add stuff at the bottom in a banner? Just different things to get you guys stimulate a little bit too, and if you wanna do something like that. Staff's preference, as we go, is we like clean and simple. This top left one resonates with a lot of us. Not necessarily in words and stuff, but just simplicity of it and welcome to Berkeley, that type of thing. So for tonight, it was just kind of to do an overview and, going back to the first slide. So the mayor kind of scooped me too. Give credit, I honestly didn't think of it coming in and working on this with staff. Last few months as Miss Linda Wilson approached, and it was a good thing, so I'm gonna say it. And the location to the north and in general too is something to consider. I never considered coming to this meeting about a location to the north. My focus was on the existing. I thought that was something to consider, a tremendous idea and tremendous input, so I wanna thank her for that. But that's something to consider as we do this too, is locations in general. The current ones are in, steel T-forms or I-beams, or they're 6 or 7 feet in the ground, pretty permanent, stand up to the wind and the rain and things like that. But I don't know if there's consideration down the road as we work through this, if you feel we need to change locations, if we need to go further out, get skinnier, go to the north. That's all up, for discussion, maybe not tonight, but down the road as we work through these stuff, if you guys want to change it. Number 2, if we don't change, if we go back and we say, okay, we like this is timeless, and staff, make it easy and send an email, as they say, and not go through the process. If we just wanna continue and just refresh the image and the wrap, and these would be brand new with this image and the way you go, and we go another 20 years. That's up for consideration in your discussion as well. Or if we embrace the consistency of what the inspiration we kind of had with the website, in the background of that, and we continue further, and you guys say, hey, keep going that way. We can make some tweaks and things as we go. That's number 3. Or if we just do, like I said, if we do at the end, if we just do a simple, if you guys just prefer the simple, and we work toward a different design, and we say, hey, we just want to welcome people to Berthoud, and when we were established, and when they get to town, we'll walk them through the rest of our story. So that's kind of what I want to do tonight, is just kind of a high level update and get that in your in your minds a little bit of what we've been working on and see if there's anything you guys want us to continue with or not, and something sticks out or something we're not thinking about, so.
Yeah, okay, so we're not, thank you very much. We're not
Yeah.
particularly going into each design, but anything major kind of.
Yeah, and like I said, you'll see them multiple times, we'll bring them back, yeah, if you have input and things like that, but tonight I just didn't wanna get into like the font size or the curvature, just high level stuff about the signs and it, what you like or didn't like, or if you have other input and just some, yeah.
Yeah, 'cause how long have those signs been up?
I'm guessing 20+ years, Tim. I know Jim went, we installed them, but I think I'm gonna say it was around 2003, 2002,
That's what I thought.
but I wasn't a director back then.
Yeah, the sun's definitely taking a toll on those ones that face south and east, because they're just UV printed, they just use UV inks, and I'm surprised they lasted as long as they did. I'm pretty familiar with the UV printing process. So your simpler sign where you showed the monument signs where it's like a solid color material that's got the color built into it, it's actually formulated into the mold of the material. And then the carving or the three-dimensional letters, which would also have the color in it, would probably last a lot better under the Colorado sun. Probably get easily 20 years out of some of those without the inks or paints or whatever fading off because of their exposure to the sun. So I think those are some material choices that we should really look at and keep it simple. I think something like what you've got here with all the color, those signs would start to deteriorate after about 5 or 10 years, especially the south and east facing sign. And we'll be back here again looking at replacing them. So I think going simpler, using materials that are more fade resistance and have the color built into it would be something we get more value out of for long term longevity, and also not noticing the fading. I think we could still incorporate some of these designs like the grass, like we're doing with the roundabouts out east, with maybe some metal type structure, kind of like what we've done with the reservoir and Wagner Farm Park, using stone and metal and cutting those scenes out. Those scenes are not gonna be products that fade or, peel off ink or paint. So, but those are just kind of my thoughts and inputs on trying to get something that lasts longer, that's not gonna look like someone went out and spray painted it or shot it with a BB gun or shotgun after a few years.
I appreciate trustee Hardy's comments. I think that's kind of the feedback we're looking for from the board. Do you like the simpler kind of concept? Do you want something a little more ornate, a little more decorative, maybe more graphics? Or do you want us to just stick with what we have and kind of refresh and get those remade? I think that's a good starting place for us, from a staff standpoint. It's always hard to pick design, right? Like we've been through that a bunch of times at the board level. I've said it before, but you don't invite the whole neighborhood over to pick paint colors for your house, right? There's a reason for that.
Unless you're in an HOA and that happens anyway.
Yeah. Well, then the HOA gets the stamp, and it's
Yeah.
usually just one person at the HOA, so, but, it's tough. Design is so subjective. I think from our perspective, simpler is better. But we wanna hear your feedback, and then we'll generate some better, some more refined concepts for you to come back and look at, just kind of within the context of whatever feedback we get tonight.
Because I think we've got some pretty nice signs out there going on, all fairly consistent with each other. Wagner Farm Park, the reservoir, even looking at the signs that are done for like Prairie Star and Vantage and some of those other ones where they've done their monument signs. They're all kind of following the similar, not exact, but very similar with the stonework and the steelwork and things like that. I think if we try and look at all those and kind of average it all together so that these would kind of like also go with that. Because this looks so different compared to what we're doing today, signage wise, for identifying parks and neighborhoods. So I think this could be stepped up and equal to those.
I'm guessing there is a possibility to do multiple ones. We don't have to have them all the same design.
We don't.
Okay.
I think our suggestion would be that all three of them are the same.
Yeah, I was just wondering.
But yeah, I mean, we could do 3 different signs, I guess.
No, okay, just a question.
I don't know that we'd consider it, but I don't know. There's no reason we can't.
These are all on highway, right?
And
And
they're
they're all
all on
like-
CDOT right of way, so there's some limitations on what we can do there.
And they're all probably, so probably 65 mile an hour, pretty fast. Okay.
Yeah, my recommendation, if you consider that, is to keep the structure, whatever you're doing the same, and do the image, if that's what you're thinking,
Yeah.
not do 3 different or 4 different
Still three of the
structures.
same quantity.
So that in your example, we'd keep this the same, and these would be 3 different kind of images.
pictures in the background,
Yeah.
yeah.
Definitely, I get it, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think
That's,
putting out elected official signs, most of us did, you know, you got when you're driving quickly, you got very brief time to see stuff, so putting little stuff on it doesn't make any sense.
that's good input.
I do think, just because I've had friends that know nothing about Berthoud, but they keep seeing the garden spot sign, that kind of helps to reinforce things. So I think, in my opinion, driving by and maybe not knowing what Berthoud is, I think I like the idea of having our kind of motto, if we had to choose, versus our establishment date. And I do like the color. I like having color. I think I like our logo because it has so much color. But I see the point of having that. I know we're not talking font, but having a good, strong difference between the wording and the background. It's easier to see. So that's all my comments. I think they're all look great though. So thank you. Trustee Ayers, anything?
No, I think I'm worried about reading some of the ones with more colors and then the colors fading, especially the ones it's on the second one, I think. Yeah, like the two mountain ones, those blues are all gonna fade into each other, fade into the green. So I think I like simpler, and if you want to add specific small details that are kind of eye-catching, fine, but I would say I would agree with simplicity, especially since you're going 65 miles an hour and
That's good points, yeah.
Trustee Albrecht?
I agree that I would like the signs to be simple and congruous with some of our other signs in town. So maybe some of the stonework makes sense if we're gonna do any type of posts that are different. I am personally a huge fan of the Blue Mountains. I think that's very Berthoud. And if there's any way we could do maybe like layered laser cut mountains on the sign that's metalwork instead of painting, like a painted graphics. That way it still kind of has that nod to the Front Range and how that's kind of mountain strata you see in Berthoud. That's really unique. If there was a way we could pull that off, that'd be kind of neat. And I do like all these concepts. I think they're really gonna be better than what we have. So this is exciting.
And what's our budget to add a fourth? That's totally possible, a fourth sign for coming
Yeah.
south.
Yeah, we take the direction and probably revisit that. Right now, like I put in your packets, is 60 for this year, but obviously this is gonna be a process. We're in the beginning of August. We're gonna bring it back and have some more discussion and some more decision making. So there would be a chance to revise that, and if you decided to do something upgraded to the foundation of these signs as well, if that's what we determined.
I think I like that idea. One day, hopefully, at least one of those should have a trail going next to it. So maybe we could pick up a little more detail. I don't know if it'll happen in time, but I personally would like to see your suggestion over on the north side of town. I know, actually, Linda, you've brought this up one time, asking if you're incorporated town, which you definitely are. But I think there is a feeling over there of kind of an identity crisis. Am I in the county or in town? And so I think it would really kind of solidify that they're part of us, part of the community.
Well, one thing we might wanna consider, we see these as more of highway signs than monument signs. Monument signage with maybe more decorative rock work and much more like what you'd see at the signs that we have at the rec center and the reservoir, all the way up to something like you see at Prairie Star or Heritage Ridge. It's kind of much more large decorative monument signage. I would put those at locations like up at
Good point.
County Road 14 and Berthoud Parkway, or on Mountain after you turn off of 287 as you're coming into town. Similar, actually, really probably as a better example, is just the monument signage at the roundabout at First Street. So I think these we would treat as highway signs and maybe keep them a little simpler, and then design and install some larger, nicer monument signage at a couple of key locations.
You guys been thinking about that?
Yeah, I don't know if you recall, we actually brought you some designs a couple of years ago that were widely panned, and
No,
so
remember the wagon one, so, okay.
we revised those like 3 or 4 times, couldn't get any
Any decision on it?
couldn't get any kind of clear direction or decision, so we just put that on the shelf.
Brick was bad.
Yeah, nobody liked the brick color. We went through
I
kind of a couple
remember.
different iterations. We did stone and brick and a windmill and not a windmill, and then the mountain graphics and not a mountain. So, but I think we should dust those off. I still think there's some opportunity to do that.
I think that's a really great
And
idea.
then that would kind of, we would treat those two different types of signs a little differently, and these would be a little simpler.
Yeah, so if you're just
It's
looking for
highway
highway
signs.
signs.
Yeah.
Have you talked to CDOT about using their print shop to make the signs?
We could,
Cause there's also another sign company that does highway signs, that was at CML. I've got their catalog, I picked it up just to see what they're offering.
we'd like to do something a little nicer, I think, or we would recommend that we do something a little nicer than kind of the printed metal. I think some dimensional signage, like that carved signage like you were talking about with the color integrated material and those kinds of things, would just help it stand out a little bit more than kind of a more traditionally printed highway sign. But still thinking about it in the context of like, you got cars whizzing by at 65 miles an hour that are, 75 feet away from the sign, at their closest probably, and that you need to just see welcome to Berthoud, maybe the town logo, something relatively simple, but nicely and attractively done. That makes sense.
Cause you could do a lot of that with vinyl too, cause a lot of the adhesive vinyls has the color, it's actually melted in or blended in with it as a liquid form when they make the vinyl, and that way the vinyl doesn't fade as fast as the ink does.
Right.
So,
Maybe we could take the least faded one and put it on Linda's side as a kind of bookmark, making us remember to keep going on it.
put it on the north end,
That,
keep
that,
it facing north.
That's great. I think these are all great comments. I wanna open it up to the audience too, just in case there's any thoughts in the room. Would anyone like to address this? Sir, please come to the front. If you could come to the front, just because the audio, and again, state your name and
Oh,
address.
excuse me,
Are you fine?
Dick Bailey again,
Might state your address. You don't have to say
1295 Tipton Street.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Good conversation, I've been through this before. One idea, and I don't know if it has any legs, is make it a contest for the kids or the community. Get the community involved. You had a community involvement lady here. Maybe you wanna get the community involved and maybe they see something you don't see about Berthoud. I mean, just a thought.
That's a great point. Thank you.
Look at David Bowie.
And,
Yeah, I was gonna say
and I like the idea of something on the north, that's where we live. And,
We're not gonna put Sinkland on it, that's for sure.
what's that?
We're not gonna put Sinkland on it.
No.
Well, thank you. That's a great point. Thank you very much.
You bet.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
Sir. Again, I'm sorry to make you do this, but name and address.
That's
yeah.
okay. I'm George Garmany again from 782 South 10th Street. I really like the idea of putting something on extended First Street, coming down. There's that turn as you come in from Loveland. There's a very feeble sign there that says turn here for Berthoud. But it'd be nice to have some better indication that, hey, you are someplace.
I'm glad I opened this up. This is good. Is there anyone else? Okay, I'll close it, bring it back to the board here. I'll give you I think it'd be good maybe that Jeremy, if you could come back with a couple designs, a little more thought out. I think that's a great idea to have Stephanie kind of make the final choice. Maybe not the design of it, but the public might be able to kind of vote somehow. I don't know.
But then that's
if you
like
guys
asking all
agree?
your neighbors to come paint the color of your house.
Well, yeah, but that way it'd be pretty simple. We know which one gets the most votes. I don't know, just a thought.
I'm a fan of that idea,
Okay.
having a few concepts that are voted on by the community and letting them have some ownership of it.
I think the good thing about doing something like that is that I think we all recognize that with matters of design, there will always be people who are unhappy with whatever gets chosen. But at least we can say, look, this is kind of what a majority of the folks that responded wanted to see, and so it's always nice not to be the one that chose, if I'm being honest. So
Yep, takes us right out of the hot seat.
Yeah.
So what about the, does that work for everyone? I think, I liked the First Street idea. Maybe we want to do a monument sign over by Heron Point, but the First Street seems kind of like it's in the same gateway where you're going really fast, right? Any thoughts on
I'd like
that?
to see something over there as well. First Street it feels kind of forgotten. I know we're doing the whole revisioning for that corridor, so it makes sense to have a good sign.
Yeah, right before the bridge where it's kind
Maybe
of
that could be part
weedy.
of the First Street corridor planning, that they add a sign and we just plan it with that. So that when we start doing all that, it gets added when we do that part.
We're hanging on the underpass where you have to go underneath it.
Mhm.
So maybe looking into that, does that work for everyone, to the First Street one?
absolutely.
Okay.
That's in those
Any questions?
northern locations, yeah.
Stephanie, do you have any questions? I guess Jeremy and you guys will talk, so, and I don't, yeah.
And then we're not putting
Just
anything
here.
further east on 56 because we'll have the roundabouts out there doing the same thing, basically, right?
That's correct.
Stephanie, we can do like a vote, I mean, for David Bowie, he was kind of like, bring in your own name, but I'd imagine a vote's doable, right? Kind of a poll or something, okay. Awesome.
And just one last thing, and like Chris talked about the difference between monument and kind of highway signs.
Yeah.
We may or may not be limited to CDOT specifications
Oh.
on these, and that's why they may ended up how they were. I'm gonna confirm that as well as I work through this with staff and things, so just so when I come back and it's not a deflated.
Things like stone pillars are probably unlikely gonna happen in the CDOT right away.
Yeah.
But, you know, being able to do a little dimensional improved sign on the existing posts that are frangible, that's, I'm sure doable.
See, First Street isn't CDOT, right?
It's
Yeah,
not.
okay.
Well, it depends on where we put it.
Depends where you're at, okay.
You seem to be okay with dimensional because that circle's mounted on top, so how much dimensional will they let you do to that printed
Yep.
sign?
Yeah.
Figure that
We'll
out.
just work through their specifications.
Thank you.
We'd rather take something to them that we know that everybody's comfortable with and say, this is what we wanna have approved.
Yeah.
As you know, if we ask, the answer is always, well, show us something. So,
And then it's no.
yeah, and then it's,
All right, thank you very much. Do you have any questions? Okay, thanks so much. Well, and for all the staff that came in tonight, really appreciate it. We'll move on to our final item tonight, which is how to handle this town trustee vacancy as,
Mayor Karspec, we do have one more item before that.
what did I miss here? Oh, yeah.
Is our utility director would like to walk through some.
Geez, sorry, Ken.
That's it, we
Social
only went 5
center.
minutes because we're 5 minutes ahead of schedule, Will.
I know, I'm jumping the gun.
I'll stall, and so we
There
can
we
get
go.
back behind schedule again. So, if you recall, earlier this year, maybe late last year, I brought to you guys a problem that we had in town. The main trunk sewer on the east side of town drastically overloaded, and I also kind of laid out a game plan on how to solve it. So today I want to talk a little bit about what we've been doing over the last several months. We have some work that we're about ready to get going on, and so I want to kind of walk through that with you. And then we're also at a point where we need to look at easement or right-of-way in order to put some pipe in the ground. So wanted to kind of lay that out, give you an idea how we're approaching it, and because that's a substantial part of the project. So a little review first. Do I have?
You need a pointer, Ken?
I got it. Can you guys see the?
Mhm.
Yeah, all right, so here's the overloaded sewer, and if you recall, here we are at the highway as it's coming through. This serves, here's Prairie Star up here, and then points north and even further west, all drain all the way over here and down here, and this sewer is drastically overloaded. We
Sorry to stop you. Can you be clear with the board and the public about kind of what overloaded means? It doesn't mean sewage is flowing in the streets.
It does not.
But yeah, just so that we're
It
clear.
doesn't mean capacity or something.
It's a capacity description, but
No sewage in the street. Yeah, it's capacity. There are sections of that as, you know, for instance, through Peakview Meadows where it's an 18-inch line, and on a typical day with some rainfall and filtration in the line, it's it's approaching a few inches from being full.
That peak view is what, Main, Mountain Avenue and First Street on the roundabout?
Yeah.
Okay.
so if you have an
Oh, you got
18-inch
one.
pipe and it's got 16 inches of water in it, it's overloaded.
It's too much. So the solution is twofold. We referred to the phase one portion of it as some, if you recall, it was some work that we were gonna be able to jump on and make some immediate improvements to it, and in order to be able to comply with some of the construction that's going on in town and accept some limited additional connections and stuff like that for some of the entitled developments. Right here, I'm kind of demonstrating what this phase one, the essence of phase one is diverting flow off of the overloaded line, which is over here, into this line here, which is 12-inch diameter through here, and with some flow metering, we demonstrated that there's very, very little flow in that. So how can we divert flow into that? There was a couple of different things that we were looking at. Up here at the water plant, we looked at adding a valve so that we weren't discharging the filter backwash out of our water treatment plant into the sanitary sewer during peak periods. So that work is actually completed, and that's in. If you look here at Fourth and Water, there we're gonna be building a diversion manhole, and the flow right now comes over, down, and into the overloaded First Street trunk, and the diversion manhole would send it south along this North Park neighborhood. Then we need to do the same thing down here. Here is another point where the flow would run over and then down into the First Street trunk, and so another diversion manhole, and then there is a sewer line that's been identified as needing to be repaired in some previous inspection efforts, and we're gonna go ahead and repair that, enlarge it to an 8-inch diameter, and then send all that flow down here. South of Mountain here, like I said, it turns to 12-inch diameter. So that's phase one. We're ready to start construction on phase one. At this point, we're trying to evaluate how to go about the construction. Will it be costly enough to warrant doing competitive bidding, or can I mobilize one of our on-call contractors to do some of that work? So you should, if you keep your eyes open, you should be seeing some backhoes and wreaking havoc out there here in the near future. The ultimate solution, if you recall, is a new pipe. And basically, it's coming all the way up here. Now, we've reoriented the map. So here, First Street North is heading off to the right-hand side of the screen. Here is the overloaded, here is the overloaded sewer right now. And so the idea is to divert it off into this area that is, soon to be developed. And we're getting a lot of development interest on that. We've been looking at several different alternative alignments. One of the things that I've learned as I've kind of tackled these projects in the past is not to get the cart too far ahead of the horse. And what I mean by that is you gotta get out and look at right-of-way and who owns the land, and start talking to them about construction of these large pipeline projects before you do a whole lot of design effort. So basically, we're looking at schematic type alignments, and then the phase that we're at now is we've touched base with all of the property owners and tried to gauge as to whether they're not just no type property owners. Everybody seems to be, for the most part, understanding of the project. I wouldn't say there's people there that are ready to go for the project, but they understand this needs to be done. It's a overloaded sanitary sewer, but we are focused on this green alignment that you can see through here. Here we are at Highway 56. This is where this 30-inch line will then run into the Farmstead subdivision that's under construction right now, and the Farmstead developer is building that 30-inch, and then it'll go south towards the treatment plant. But nevertheless, here's all of these large estate lots that were developed in the county, and we have to get across all of these and around Bacon Lake. And so kind of zooming in on there. Oh, one other thing, the way we're approaching this phase 3 portion in a couple of pieces. Our first push is to get it up to County Road 10 or Water Avenue. And that's, and then at that point, you know, take an assessment as to see where we're at. My thought is it's likely that if the town would construct it up to this point, by the time we got it to here, there could be a lot of the development activity occurring that would then facilitate, you know, continuing the line north. If not, then we'd continue on with the town-funded project. Anyway, looking at this kind of in two pieces, here we're back oriented north and south again, and identifying the alignment through all these properties. This black line right here is the Bacon Lake outfall that's in service. That will discharge storm sewer, and Bacon Lake releases irrigation water out of that also. Anyway, here we would be more or less paralleling the Bacon Lake outfall, and then there's several structures up here, and then so if you kind of look in the middle of these properties, there's a lot of open pasture, and so after talking to all these people, this looked like a very good spot to kind of run it east and west, and then back north again as we go across these properties. We need to be careful that we're not getting too close to Bacon Lake, because we would be taking on a lot of groundwater that would make the construction very difficult. Here we cross the town's stormwater outfall, so basically most of the stormwater that is caught and conveyed south of Bunyan and is conveyed to the east makes its way through here. I think it's like 2 48-inch pipes, something like that. And so we would cross that and head up there. And then as we go further north, these two parcels right here have submitted development apps to us. Initially, they submitted development apps, and then there was they got stopped because they didn't have a way to sewer the property, and so both owners are very interested in the outcome, and so would be very willing participants in the project with respect to providing easements and stuff like that. If you go north, we're back oriented. North is to the right again, and this is the Larson property, and we've spoken to Greg a little bit on that. He's got a haul road through the middle of this pivotal sprinkler setup that would make a very good easement way. So that's kind of what we're kind of focused on there with the initial discussion with him. And then, as you can see, we're up here at County Road 10, and at this point, you know, we'll just see what happens. We could, if we get up to this point, development to the north is not happening, and we need to end the project. We could lay a trunk sewer over to here and relieve the overloaded 12-inch line at that point, and do a lot of good. One other thing I want to add as we're looking at alignments here is, I don't know if you recall, the last time I was in front of you guys, we were presenting the water wastewater master plan. One of the key water distribution projects is a transmission line that follows almost this same identical alignment. That line is needed to get water from basically the water treatment plant down to the intersection of County Road 1, County Line Road, and Mountain. So we're approaching this project as a twofer. We're gonna get both of these lines in through this same corridor. That's the game plan right now anyway. So that, and so the specifics of that and what that looks like with respect to the easements are, we've identified based on looking at having two pipes in this easement, that a permanent easement of 40 foot wide is what we're gonna need. That'll give us room to build it, and it'll give us room to maintain it and operate it in the future. In addition to that, a temporary easement is needed to facilitate the contractor's actions. Material storage, back and forth with his equipment, stuff like that. So a total of 90 feet of easement width. And that would be spread over the course of 11 properties. Those estate lots down along Mountain, plus Parsons, plus the Larson property. That's 11 actual parcels that we would need to negotiate with those property owners. So we looked at this alignment, we've established the width, and we looked at areas. And our land agent from Western States Land Services went and did some research, got some comps on what highly productive ag land was bringing, and also what some of these estate lots were bringing. And he then unitized that to dollars per square foot, and then we applied that to all of these square footages for 40 foot wide permanent easement. Industry standard for an easement is it's worth about half of the permanent value of property. That's kind of a standard starting point. And then temporary is another tenth of that. And a temporary easement is something that you would just hold during construction. You wouldn't file that in the courthouse, and that would never become part of the property. You just had that to facilitate construction, and then it would sunset and expire.
Okay, so the long-term one would be 40 feet.
Correct.
Okay.
So right now, our estimate is with these 11 parcels, it amounts to what we're estimating as about $250,000 to $300,000 in property costs. If you look at the total project cost, that's approaching about 1% of the project cost. I've been on projects that easement costs, and granted, they were in more densely urbanized areas, but they approach 5% of the project cost. And so this is basically, though, just a starting point. It's not a budget that I'm willing to say that we're ready to hold fast to. I think actually when you get into it with some back and forth and some, well, you guys didn't notice this. Oh, good point. That does increase the value of the property. I mean, there'll be plenty of that, and we need to go in with our eyes wide open. Plus, there'll be, you're going through here, you're gonna remove some trees, those trees need to be replaced. So there'll be some costs associated with that kind of stuff also. That will be wrapped up in the easement agreement with each of these property owners. So anyway, that's basically kind of the game plan. Our first step would be to, we've already approached all the owners, and they've all said, well, let's start talking money. And so that's be the next step, is mobilize our land agent to approach these 11 parcels. And we're kind of focusing on some of the most difficult ones first, because they could dictate changes in alignment, and which could snowball down to some of the other players. So there's a little bit of strategy to that, but it's mostly just from a practical, alignment design standpoint. So basically that's it. I don't think we need a specific action, or I just wanted to put this in front of you guys, see if you had any questions on this, and we're ready to have me mobilize my consultant to start contacting these people.
Thank you. The wastewater, stormwater easement, isn't there one going down to, isn't that Wonderland or Parsons? Isn't there some kind of easement on that?
Yes. Yeah, through, let's see, Yeah, right through here. There is an easement, yeah.
And they're still able to build on it? Okay.
Yeah, so we wouldn't work around that easement. We wouldn't buy an easement over the top of an existing
yeah.
town-owned easement.
I guess my question is, it's a long shot, is to try to get a surface easement with a trail easement on it too, to get through. That would require more money, and I understand the landowners, they're always concerned about people walking through. Wouldn't be an easement on top. And this is using, construction impact fees, correct?
Actually, this is kind of a combo project. This is addressing, a maintenance overloaded type issue. It's primarily though a fund, 22 and 24, capital improvement due to
Impact fees.
development impacts. It's and funded by impact fees, yes.
But the capacity overload would also be because of development, right?
Yeah, I guess that's one way to look at it. I mean, it's system deterioration, which is allowing excess flow in, so it's a little tricky because you have in most sanitary sewer systems throughout the country, you have overloaded interceptors and trunk sewers in the system itself, and those are operational maintenance type problems that you would fund and fix with the enterprise account. Then while you're in there, you also need to look at, well, will this serve future areas, and let's make sure we add capacity for that, and then that's funded with impact fees.
So you're saying, okay, so my question is, prior to 2016, with all the growth, we would still be doing this because there's a lot of leaching into it?
Yes, this project was identified in the 2017 master plan.
Okay.
As an overloaded sewer.
Just trying to figure, okay. And you were talking briefly about the construction, the landowners taking this on? They've been approached to you about them doing as part of a development agreement?
Not constructing, but being willing participants with respect to the easement acquisition.
Has there been any talk about a trail easement?
No.
If there's an existing underlying easement for water and sewer lines where it's 40 feet wide, as those projects develop, they won't be allowed to build anything on top of it, and so it makes for natural trail corridors. What I think the existing landowners are not gonna wanna, not that they won't, but it's a little harder sell to get them to agree to an easement that's for water and wastewater purposes, but also trail purposes right now when they don't have any intention of developing or redeveloping their existing property. And so those will be tough sells.
Yeah.
It's definitely something we can negotiate and see if we can get them to agree to.
Maybe something in the future.
Yeah.
I mean, most of those estate properties along mountain are all fenced all the way around, and so to have a trail easement, they have to, open their fences up.
In high school, I used to use the Whitmore property to jet ski on Beacon Lake. Her son was my best friend. So I've been back, I see what you're talking about here. And I can see that being difficult. I think it's really worth a shot though. I mean, that was an idea with the utility easement going all the way out to I-25. I think our attorney at the time never wrote it down, but sounded pretty clear that several board members thought that would have a surface easement with it. So maybe there's some talk, and maybe we don't get all the way through those little ranchettes, but we could get something through the bigger properties.
I think through the bigger properties is a much more doable thing, certainly in the short term.
Well, and then curve it up through that Wonderland one, cause they're not gonna be able to build on that either, right?
No, but all of these all these properties along the First Street corridor have a couple of different trail requirements as part of the corridor plan that we would expect them to build, including, I don't know if you'll recall, but there's that linear park planned, 150-foot wide linear park, kind of a block off of First Street for the entire stretch,
Yeah.
north and south, really all the way from the Wonderland property all the way to 287.
This is my opinion, I think it part of this is kinda hard to look at because this is a beautiful view. Parsons and Ivar Larson's property. It's gonna take a while to do. So May, you actually brought that up as kind of when your concerns with the First Street corridor. Maybe there's a way to get around that by getting around the houses. And so you're near the lake. you're not just doing that straight line down First Street. That was my thought.
And just as one more reminder, our code requires 150-foot setbacks from the high water mark of lakes. And so our expectation would be that as those properties develop, that there would be trail corridors through there. Cause you can't build right down to the lake, and that those areas would be maintained as public open spaces around the lakes. That is part of our comprehensive plan, and I believe we incorporate it into our code, but if not, it'll be part of the next code round of code revisions.
Yeah, I think there's
Because
room to do
the
that at Hillsdale and a lot of
comprehensive
areas,
plan, the comprehensive plan identified, kind of public open space buffers around Bacon and Sunny Slope with a trail corridor between the two as well. Off of that First Street
Yeah,
linear park.
well, that'd be good to look into. Part of this. Any other questions?
No, Mayor, you asked a couple of mine. I guess this is a horrible question to ask, but best case scenario, how long would this project take to get up to County Road 10?
Oh, well, I mean, so big hurdles in front of us are the landowners. Second is since it's, a lot of this is still in unincorporated Larimer County, there'd be a 1041 permit process. That is about a year. And so the thought is, we would be ready to build at the end of 2024, and then it's about a year construction process.
Okay.
You know, so theoretically, by the end of 2025, we could be, rounding the fourth bend.
And then I guess another question that I have is what would, through these properties before, if and or when they were to be either to be developed or turned into open space type corridors, what is it gonna look like above the sewer? Is it gonna be manholes in those fields? Is it gonna be the sort of U-shaped outputs or?
Yeah, it would be manholes flush with the ground, every, 500 to 700 feet. Or where we turn a corner.
And so if in the future those did turn into pedestrian or recreation corridors, that's not gonna affect either?
No, you would work your surfacing to fit that flush manhole. What I've seen and what I appreciate is if you have a paved trail, put it just outside of the manhole, have a chat trail up to the manhole, then your operations crews can have good access to it. What I don't wanna do is bury the manholes. We got a lot of that throughout town, and then we can't find it, we can't inspect our system, and that's a mess. So it needs to be a very compelling reason for me to approve burying any of these manholes.
Thank you.
I was just curious about timeline on phase one, when that's gonna start and when you expect it to be complete.
Yeah, the one portion of it is likely that we would be able to start here within, possibly the month of August, September. The portion at Fourth and Water. The rest of it, if we do go to competitive bid, that would be advertising period and that's a 30-45 day time period, so that would put us further into October and November. The design is finished, we're ready to go ahead and get a contractor selected and on board.
I'm just excited to see movement on this.
Yeah.
The presentation you did earlier this year, last year, whenever that was really thorough, and I think it shows that we're trying to meet the demand and address some of these aging pipelines. And those infrastructure questions are the ones we get a lot, and so I think it's nice to be able to show this well thought out plan that has a staggered approach, but it's long term and long range as well, not just immediate needs. So thank you for
That's
that.
what we're shooting for.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You bet.
Good night. Okay, I think I'm for final item here, I think, yep, the town trustee vacancy. This is how the board wants to fill the seat vacated by trustee former trustee Jeff Butler, who unexpectedly and unfortunately had to leave the board. Last time he filled actually the seat of former trustee Lonnie Stevens, who also had to leave the board. Gift that keeps on giving for us. We got 6 months left until that seat's open for election again. So the question is, how does the board want to select the next trustee for the seat? I believe this is not introduced by anyone, right? This is just a town board decision here. Oh, we got you. Clerk Samora.
Thank you, Mayor Karsbeck.
I just stole your thunder, sorry, go ahead.
Well, perfectly fine, you explained it very well. As the board is aware, there is a vacancy that exists on the town board. The town board will need to determine how that vacancy is filled. It will need to be filled within 60 days of it occurring. It did occur as of August 1st, so 60 days from that date. The last vacancy in May of 2022 was filled by soliciting applications from sitting commission and committee members that are already serving in a volunteer position with the town, as well as at that time it was also opened up to the candidates that were at the election the month preceding. So the board will need to determine how that is filled. The board may consider opening it back up to the volunteer committees, since there is already active interest from those individuals.
There is interest, like the people have
I
approached.
should clarify active interest to serve the community.
Oh, get you, yeah,
Not
yeah.
necessarily
No,
as a trustee.
Definitely, I get you, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, any particular thoughts, trustees?
I could, like what he suggested, since we're not close to another election, I like the process where we basically put the application process out to our existing committees. Pull from that, since it's only by the time we get all this done, it'd be a 5-month term. Term, sentence, however you wanna call it.
Trustee Albert?
I think that's the cleanest way to go about it. And it is a short term, so I think that's, I don't know, the quickest and most efficient way.
Yep, I'll put my thoughts in too. I think that's the cleanest way and the most fair way. I'm sure there's people in the community that are also experienced and interested. But I think to be fair, it'd be good to just match what we did last time. And we can always explain this is for a 6-month term and we need, I think it really is in our benefit to have someone already kind of oriented with the town. So I think I agree with you guys. Cool. Does that work?
So
Okay, when are we gonna start soliciting? Just pretty immediately?
we'll start immediately.
Okay.
And just for clarification, so that I know I understand the direction clearly, the direction is to open up the applications to members that are currently seated on volunteer committees.
Correct, except for Youth Advisory Commission, but everyone else.
That's kinda cool. But
Yeah.
including,
Have a 12-year-old in here?
including the planning commission as well, correct?
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Yeah.
Great,
Sorry, we said committees and commission is a little slightly different, just wanna make sure we're all clear.
tree board.
Committees and commissions.
Awesome,
Certainly, that's what we'll do.
great, thank you.
Thank
Seems
you.
pretty clean.
And then should we set a application deadline?
Oh, yes. Well, what would you suggest? What did we do last time?
So I would suggest at the very latest to make that appointment by the 26th of September. We could look at timing to facilitate that by the 12th of September. If that sounds reasonable to the board, gives us a little over a month to solicit those applications. The last time there was a vacancy, the board may recall that there were public interviews of each of the candidates. So we would be looking at doing something very similar to that process on that meeting date
On the 12th.
on the 12th.
So it'd be, yeah, like last time, around a month and then get the applications back, also interviews, and then also an appointment that same night.
Yes, that is correct.
Great. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, that concludes our regular agenda items tonight, and we will just move right on to reports, and we'll start off with trustee Hardy.
Nothing really to report. So, yeah, I was gonna comment, but I'll wait till we actually get that subject matter back on our agenda.
Great, I thought they were gonna wait. Okay, thanks. Trustee Ayers.
I missed a couple of big meetings. I picked the wrong time to go camping, I think. So sorry for that.
Don't be.
I also missed the last port meeting, which was last week. They discussed the Richardson Park plans, which are at 50% now, for that north phase. They look pretty good. I read over, heard some of the comments, and everything is moving forward. Everything looks good. It's all, obviously it's a huge park, so everyone's pretty excited about it. I think the other thing they talked about was conditions for installing a pickleball court at Pioneer Park, and they were worried about the vicinity to the homes there, especially the new road that's being built. And I need to talk to Keith Knoll to see some specific comments about what they did, and I can bring that back to you guys if there's anything different from what we've heard from all of the rest of the concerns from the community about pickleball. So that's
Maybe I have a question that one thing we could look into that is, sounds like there's some new tech out there or people are using either the ball or the paddle, but it kind of muffles the noise.
Okay.
If that, we could make that a requirement, if that would help that area, but
okay.
I don't know.
I will.
Not a big deal, if you just happen to ask, if not, no problem. Cool, well, thank you very much. You don't need to apologize for going camping, and it makes you, more calm when you come back.
Yeah.
You can bring meat with you too if you want to.
Alright.
Trustee Albrecht.
I don't have much to report. I just wanna make sure that we have a date in place for that mosquito policy setting conversation so that we can have something more defensible in place and be able to flesh that out in a timely manner. Did we discuss any dates?
I was thinking when everyone was back, looking into this, Sean's was supposed to be here at this meeting, and he'll be gone next time, I guess, so we'd still be down, we could have Mike back, but we'd still be down too, cause the appointment wouldn't be filled yet. What's our next meeting look like as far as, I mean, we got water on there, is there anything we could push off?
August 22nd, there will be a couple of larger items. We can rearrange the schedule if we wanted to focus on that meeting. We could also schedule a study session. August has a fifth Tuesday, and historically, we've grabbed that fifth Tuesday as an opportunity to have a study session because you still have one kind of break week in between that study session and the first meeting of September. So we could consider doing it on the 29th as well.
I was recommend a study
Yeah.
session where we could be more conversational and not be so time restricted.
Well, yeah,
I would
okay.
appreciate that as well. I would also ask, I don't know if it's even in the works yet, but hypothetically, what would a study session on this topic look like? What kind of information would we be getting? What kinds of things would be, I guess, presented to us?
I think that's an important question to answer. I don't know that I have an answer for you. We'd like that feedback from you. Actually, one of the things, my report tonight only had 2 items. This was one of them. What I'd like to suggest is that we send the trustees a little survey and see if we can kind of gather some feedback from you about kind of where your priorities lie and where you think we should be focused and what kind of information you'd like in order to make a decision if you feel like you don't have the information that you need. And then we can kind of go out and gather that. We could do that in the next, week to 10 days. We could bring that back to you on the 22nd at your meeting. It can't be confidential. We make those, the results of our little, information gathering public. And then we could kind of define the scope of that study session. That would still be a tight turnaround if we wanted to get some additional information from folks, but if we got pretty quick results on the survey and there was some clear kind of consistency among the trustees in terms of what they'd like to see or hear, we could try to gather that up as soon as we could on the 29th.
Okay, so 29th would be potentially a study session, information in the meantime, and that's a study session, so no action. So the furthest, if we came to an agreement, we could take any action on this would probably be Tuesday the 5th, right?
No, Tuesday the 12th. The 5th is a off week.
Okay, well, to be honest with you, I think by that time maybe mosquitoes won't, this will be for next year.
I think there's a high likelihood this will be for next year regardless. Unless you chose to make a decision on the 22nd.
Yeah.
But But even with our kind of the previous policy of 2 weeks of 0.75 vector index and above, because our vector index was 0 this week, the soonest we would get together and meet, even if like, vector index spiked again next week and the week after would be the August 22nd meeting anyway.
I think the reason to do it sooner rather than later is just to show the community that we're being responsive and responsible. Because even though we paused the issue, it didn't mean that it was resolved. And so I'd like to show them that our intent is to resolve or come up with some solutions that are amenable to the board and the community, not to sit on it.
I mean, the option of next week.
I think the 29th that works just fine too.
Okay.
And we can do it on the 22nd as well.
Because that's my thing. We've gone through so many study sessions on these throughout the years, but I think, yeah, it's good for the new trustees. Yeah, I think that survey will help. I'm
Well,
thinking in my
so-
head what new information we're gonna get, but
We'll see what the agenda's gonna look like on the 22nd. If it's not ending up being a real heavy agenda, I'd like to see it on the 22nd. Cause I'm gonna be gone one of the Tuesdays in September, so I'd hate to miss the decision-making part versus the discussion part.
It would be helpful for staff to understand what information you'd like us to try to bring that we haven't already provided.
okay, yeah, I think a poll works. I think Trustee Murphy sent his ideas out already. We can email him, see if he has any more. And then if it's something that we need to push, I don't think the landscape design guidelines are pressing, right? So that could go to the
No,
next one.
I think there's things that can wait for sure.
Does that work, everyone? If there is room for the 22nd, and if not, then we go to a study session?
I think
Or are you
it's-
worried about
I
taking
think
action?
It needs to be a study session, cause it's that collaborative moment, if we are brainstorming ideas, I
Okay.
feel like it would be better if it's not
A little less pressure.
less pressure, and also, the community can listen to that conversation, then come to the next meeting kind of with their own ideas if they have issue with our conversation or to contribute to it, they've listened to it and then they could come to that meeting kind of ready to address it.
Okay.
Does that
Yeah,
make
I agree with that. And from my own point of view as well, I know staff and everyone has given us a lot of information already, like you said, Administrator Kirk, but that's over the course of, for me, a year and a half.
Mhm.
And so it might be useful to me personally to kind of have at least everything in an overview right together so that I can kind of pick and compare and contrast different information that I probably have gotten before and just
No, it's totally fair. I think it's a ton of information. I mean, your experience, you're not brand new anymore, but relatively, yeah, I think this is the first kind of, totally fair.
I think a survey would be helpful. I personally would like, I think data tells a story. I'd like to see our trap data laid out in a way that we're looking at, is our application effective? Is it changing that number? Can we trace that and look at it and have that conversation? Because I think that's a big question mark I have is the data we're basing these decisions on actually effective and valid data? And I know that County Health has been present many times in there, that those studies are important too. But it's also, we're looking at things at maybe a community level, at what can we do at a community level to counteract the issue on a more small town, in more small town ways that maybe other larger communities couldn't, and make an impact, if that's even possible. If there are other communities that are doing things or programs that are counteracting the issue in creative ways, I'd like to know. Or just different approaches with the collection, things like that I think would be helpful in the survey to have you guys gather that would be helpful so that we're not being the subject matter experts.
Would it be help to put on the question on the survey if we'd ask trustees, ask us if we wanted Director Gonzalez, give him the offer to show up, and also Rayla Abernathy or someone from City of Boulder who's been doing this? Or do you guys not want professionals there? Is that?
Well, we've heard from county a lot. I
Yeah.
prefer to hear more localized kind of opinions, like the bee lady, Beth,
Beth Conray, who's a
I'd love to hear
representative for
from her.
PPAN.
and hear maybe her ideas instead of just, here's the controversy, here's some implementation ideas that I have for our community. Or I know that I reached out to one of our garden people in town and she suggested a bat expert to come and speak to the dynamics of that, because we could say, hey, let's put up all these bat boxes, but we don't necessarily know the dynamics. And so I'd like to hear from an expert on maybe some of these alternative ideas.
So I love, yeah, I'm not trying to discount, I think those are great. I think just my suggestion with Boulder is that they're doing this, I'd imagine they've kind of looked in doing this for years, they know which options might be the best, but
I would prefer, I mean, I wouldn't mind hearing from Boulder just because we haven't yet. That would be a new perspective if they're doing different implementations than we are.
Mayor Karspec will recall that the representative came from the city of Boulder the last time. She won't make recommendations to you. She was very reluctant to do that for obvious reasons. But she was happy to tell their story and kind of how they approach it.
That would be helpful.
And I think, you know, from our perspective, again, I think it would be really helpful. If you have specific people in mind that you wanna hear from, it'd be good for us to know. In just the same way that you guys don't wanna be subject matter experts on this, to be frank, none of us are either at the staff level. We just have no ability to make reasonable, firm recommendations to you about the appropriate approach to this. I wouldn't pretend to, I just don't know enough to kind of declaratively say this is the right way to handle this. And to be honest, I'm not even sure where to look for other communities and kind of unique approaches to, outside of the city of Boulder, I'm not aware of any that do anything really different than either what we do or what everybody around us does, which is pretty intensive spraying. So
Boulder may be a resource.
so I
that
think,
they-
yeah, to the extent that you have specific ideas about information you'd like to hear, we'd love to try and track that down. I just, in a lot of cases, I'm not even really sure where to start, and I don't know that any of our staff is.
And I have a question for you, and that this might not be the correct time for this, but in your in y'all's research and implementation, how much of the information that we all are getting and that you are getting is, I guess, specifically focused on West Nile virus eradication or mitigation as opposed to more generally mosquito
nuisance
mitigation?
type stuff, yeah.
Right, so I'm just thinking, probably not the right time I put this in email, right, but it seemed, I'm worried that there might be more of a focus specifically on the carrier of the virus as opposed to more widespread kinds of mitigation, and that might change the information that we're getting. I don't know if it will,
I would say my experience thus far has been heavily weighted towards dealing with the carrier of the virus. Not, you know, how do you treat virus, I mean, you know, the virus comes from the bird population, and nobody's ever talked about eliminating birds or, you know, inoculating birds
But
or
dang,
anything like
we
that.
gotta look at
but-
ravens, man, they're
Um,
getting away free on this.
Yeah.
and that's my fear for this,
But I
this
think
kind of
the
thing.
primary focus is the transmitter from, you know,
The
from
vector to the
virus
human to the, yeah.
to humans is the mosquito, and so that's where the focus has been.
So if we're looking at some of this as the community would be watching at us, kind of, you know, conversation this. I think if I was in the audience, one of the questions I would have is why is Lamar Health not here? You know, the conversation would, in my opinion, be, you know, we've heard from Tom before, and I think Beth Conrad is a great person to have. She did come last time, and I think, yeah.
Well, I think we've already heard so much from Larimer County Health that their answer has not changed. They have not provided any other solutions. Their only solution is to spray.
Mhm.
And I think there are alternatives. I think there are other solutions, cause it's already been proven where they do spray, they have cases of West Nile.
Sure,
Spraying
no.
does not eradicate West Nile.
Right, and
It does
I
not
understand
lower
your
your consequences
frustration
or
here.
ability to get it.
And I do think for practical reasons, we should save most of that debate and conversation for the next meeting or study session.
Right, right,
That's
yeah.
it.
I appreciate what you're saying about bringing both parties to the table.
I think that would just, even if nothing else, help the image of it, but
Sure.
I'm not gonna push any further, so I
Well,
don't,
if
it
anything,
doesn't sound like we're gonna have.
having that presented, that information that he has brought to us presented in that forum, so it could be rediscussed and looked at as an important part of the conversation.
Mhm.
Could be an option or having him here.
Yeah.
Either way.
And we don't have to schedule it, so there's like a dialogue, and they all have to be here at the same time. I was just thinking, hear from sides, and then we can maybe ask questions if I don't know, I haven't really thought it out in my head that much how that night would go.
Yeah, although that wouldn't necessarily be the worst thing to have the experts have to discuss it in front of us.
I think it puts, you know, Rayla was so hesitant to, it can affect your career real easily when you're in front of a video and you have people really passionate about stuff attacking you. I think that's why people are hesitant. It was really impressive for me to even see Rayla show up. But anyway, just my thoughts. I think the survey is the best, Chris.
I think at least it would be helpful for us if you just have, here's some questions I have, I would love to have answers to. I think we could at least try and figure out where we can find, or at least get somebody that might be willing to answer those questions. And, you know, if you have specific people that like, hey, this is somebody I've talked to and I think has some good knowledge on the subject, this is somebody I think we should be considering, I mean, we'll try to do that. I mean, I feel like what we're gonna try to do is just gather up information and bring it to you. But I think, you know, again, from a staff standpoint, there's just not gonna be, we're not gonna make a recommendation to you, to be frank.
Cool. Totally understand, yeah. Okay, does that work for everyone? Everybody? Okay. Turn it over to staff now. Oh, I guess did we cover yours? Yeah, that was your question, right? Okay. Let's see. Behavioral Health Policy Council is coming up. The executive director is not with the county anymore, so the interesting thing will be how that progresses. She kind of started that program, so I'm sure her replacement will be in the works. And Lori Stolen was a fantastic person that we, in my opinion, from Chris and I and Tim, I think you were on here too, Tim, when they first came to us with Tom Donnelly and the other commissioners. If it wasn't for Lori Stolen, we would not have a behavioral health program that has so much potential and is really unique in the state. So I'm sure she's not listening, but if just in case she is, it's been really appreciated to have her. Other than that, several rail meetings. Guys really trying to push Berthoud, not getting any response. I'm frustrated, but I think it's okay to say some of that is deliberate, that there might not be any solution right now for why Berthoud's the only town on the Front Range that has a trail going through the train going through their main street, but not a stop and still being taxed for that. I brought that up today, that this is just gonna be turning into train spotting for our residents, paying to do it. And that's more traffic, more noise. So the other part of this, I don't know if I brought this up in the last reports, is that the governor has indicated he wants to push this issue to this legislative session. So that's 2023 to 2024, potentially for a vote to the people on Front Range passenger rail that I guess would be finalized at this time next year. I don't support that as a director, and there's others on the board that are really hesitant for that, but there's apparently, we had the chief of staff for the governor at our last meeting, and they're dead set on having a big transportation and transit budget this upcoming session. So I think there's gonna be a lot of interest and push and kind of a fear of missing out to not try and connect these two things. So there might be a good chance, they started talking about a mini ballot measure. I don't know what that means, but that might be just looking at the Boulder, Denver area that's kind of been gypped out of a previous train, but is still paying for it. So this might be a solution for them. And that's it. I'll turn it over to staff.
I only have one other thing for you tonight. I mentioned in a previous update that we've been working with Larimer County. They're trying to organize a emergency management exercise for what they call a policy group. So city managers, department heads that might have some input on kind of specific exercise topic, in this case, some significant utility outages. And they'd like to have a couple of elected officials from each jurisdiction participate. The exercise is scheduled for early November. As you can imagine, it's been quite the challenge for the county to try and get a date that they felt like might work for everybody.
Yeah. Busy.
So our request would be that we'd have 2 trustees participate, not to volunteer you, Mayor Karspec, but my suggestion would be that you would be one of them.
Voluntold? Happy to be there.
and,
Can we open it up to more?
And if we do more than 2, I will have to talk about whether or not that becomes like a public meeting, we have to notice or anything, I don't know. I haven't really thought through that, but
Well, yeah, because the sheriff actually opened up for us for a training,
we did notice that.
Yeah, so we just noticed again or something, if there's interest. Yeah, I'm happy to do
But
that.
at a minimum, we'd like to have 2 there.
Volunteers tribute.
And I thought that Trustee Albrecht might have some interest based on her background and experience. So if the 2 of you would like to be our kind of primary trustees, and then we'll talk about with Aaron or Alicia about what do we need to do if we open that up to a bigger group? Is that necessary? I don't know that we want to know this is a public meeting, because it's intended very much to be a focused kind of working group with all these different agencies of the county. But in any case, November 2nd, if you'll pencil that in, it'll be in the evening from 4 to 7 p.m. And we'll get you all the specifics, location and all that good stuff. But
Works for me. Does that work for everyone else? Okay. May?
That'd be great.
Okay. November 2nd.
Very good, that's it for me.
I got an MPO meeting that night, but we're gonna cancel that. B. Yep, cool. Welcome, Alicia. Yeah, glad that our regular attorney is in Denver tonight, and Alicia's great. And it's also great to have you on the board and get some experience here, even though you've always been fantastic, so it's not like you're here to get more training or experience, but thanks for being here.
Yeah, happy to be here and like I said, putting more faces to names that I've emailed with throughout the week, so it's happy to be here.
Didn't throw any tough questions at you. If I could think some really legal stuff. Dang it. Okay, is there anything else, trustees? Without any objection, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
You're gonna have to tease Aaron, say, hey, look, you weren't here tonight, you were doing really fast. I think there's.
Still wanna have coffee, cause I'd love to.
One too,
Yeah,
yeah.
well, then, you know, hey,
You're the little busy one, not me.
there's some,
No, maybe I need to come.
Yeah, the little-